So another thing that seems to be common, and this came in as a question as well, just asking how we handle this with our process, is that software companies leave the responsibility of hosting the software to the client. So they have a software build and then they say, okay, well, this has to be hosted somewhere. So it seems that the software companies either do not have in-house operations or a deployment team, or that they do not know what is the best hosting platform. So in our example, with HIPAA and HIPAA compliance, and I know a lot of people who may watch this or that we do business with are in the insurance industry, so HIPAA is super important, and it matters where and how you host.
Yes.
Can you speak to our ability to kind of talk through that with our client?
Well, a lot of people will say, let's just put it out on Amazon AWS. And so, that doesn't work so well. They do have HIPAA-based security. Our experience has been that every time we've looked at it, it's very expensive, or it requires a lot of expertise because there's certain servers there. You're having to check these logs and make sure they're not being hacked. You have to update these servers. And to us, I mean, my whole thing is if you built the company correctly, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, that shouldn't be necessary. You should be able to just pay somebody to do that. Now, if you're a massive organization, you got your own staff and stuff to do that, you knock yourself out. That's not what has ever been my level of focus, because I am ultimately about being nimble and profitable. If you want to bring that stuff in-house and do it, okay, that's fine. But it's just foolish to think about, just think from the people that we work with, because a lot of stuff that the conversations we're having is almost new startup type of stuff. They don't have existing infrastructure. A lot of times this is their first rodeo. It's the first time they've ever developed software. You better be talking to them about how to actually make it work. It was like, no, we're going to develop it. Here you go. Well, what do I do with this? You have to walk them through the entire thing. And so, I mean, that's, again, even I was thinking as you were talking about that, even when you're developing software, understanding when you're creating an administrative problem for somebody. There's very commonly that you'll look at a certain function that I'll go, they'll go, well, no, that'll work fine. That'll work fine. The client can put this data in and then our staff can just take it. Well, no, we'll just use a manual process. No, that's a terrible idea. So what you just did was you just hired a person. You just structured your software, so you just hired an extra person.
Because there wasn't a proper export, or it
that is
wasn't
exactly
automated
right.
a certain way. You
that
just
is exactly
added to
right.
your fixed cost.
That's exactly right. And so, and other people just shell right past it. Whoa. You just spent $65,000 a year. And that's assuming the person shows up and that you don't have to fire them and hire somebody else, and that, there's going to be disciplinary issues. Eventually, you have to buy that person benefits. You just spent a lot of money. Just take the extra time and figure out how to solve the problem, or go upstream and figure out how to more streamline it. It's a big deal. And what is that worth? It's worth a ton. And like from our perspective, well, how do you know that you know how to do it? Well, you look around, all right? We've been able to develop extremely efficient software that makes us quite profitable.
Yeah, exactly. So coming back from an entrepreneurial perspective, what I hear is when you say, okay, $65,000 for an employee, I automatically go, okay, that's $65,000 that come directly out of the profits,
correct,
which has a multiplier,
right,
which affects my company's valuation.
Correct.
So it's 65,000 times 8, 9,
right,
10, or
right.
We're in a technology space, could be 12, 13.
Right. So whenever we sell this thing, that decision just cost me $500,000.
Yes, easily. When it didn't have to, you could have fixed it right now.
That's exactly right.
And again, I think that's just another thing that stands out to me as far as how our brains think from an entrepreneurial perspective, saying, let's look at what your company's going to be worth as a result of this.
Now, and think about that. Okay. So now we're going past the initial we discovered with you, like what's your software idea is. We try to talk you out of it.
Right.
And tried to help you understand what was going to be required, that if you really wanted to go down this road, what the financial commitment's likely going to be, that it's not going to be overnight, that you're going to run into roadblocks, that you're going to, have that one situation where you think your software is going to be done in April. And then, if you start, it's like you're digging a gas line, you realize you got some bodies down there. You got to move those bodies first. And so now you're 3 months later, you have to get to where, once you have gotten that in your head, then we go on to the whole specs. We were talking about building out the specs. That's when all that stuff happens up front. And it's more expensive. Why? Because you're not cheap and I'm not cheap. And, for people who have been entrepreneurial, but in the long run, oh my gosh, is it cheaper? Little bit more expensive on the front end, but not a lot. It's still not as expensive as what most people charge.
Sure.
But it's just a different approach.
Well, here's another thing that matters